session 0 should always be done to ask the players what sort of game they want to play. So I could bring up my survey that I use. So whenever I'm starting a game with new players, I send them 2 surveys. I send them a survey that asks for what sort of style of game that they want to play. It gets them to rate out of 100 how they fare on certain questions, like on a scale of rules and seriousness and realism. Do they want a serious, gritty drama where everything is realistic and there's consequences for everything? Or do they want a silly romp where there's just like they get to just have a small episodic, kind of like a sitcom, where they can, no matter what craziness happens in one episode, it doesn't affect the next episode. It's just hard resets every episode, effectively. So silly, light-hearted romp with rules to the side, or gritty, serious realism, or anywhere in between. Then the second question is: do they want classic dungeon delving with traps and monsters? Do they just want it to be a dungeon? If you go 100 on that, then you just want a dungeon delve. You want to. Every episode is you just go into a dungeon for whatever reason. You got to save the girl. You got to get the ancient artifact, whatever it is. You just overcome some traps. You kill a bunch of monsters. You get to the loot. You loot it. You go back out again, and that's a dungeon delve. And some people hate that. Some people like that is exactly what D&D should be, and some people like I don't care. I don't care about that at all because there's no roleplay involved. And then there's roleplay. How interested are you in it? Chances to roleplay with NPCs and other PCs? Do you want long periods where you're just sitting around a campfire talking with your other players in character, or do you want none of that? Side games. How interested are you in puzzles, riddles, brain teasers, mini games, skill challenges, little side games and mini things that are sort of not necessarily part of the game, but like skimming stones and like. Going to a casino and playing casino games in game. Exploration, visiting new parts of the world. How interested are you in that? Danger level of your average encounter. How dangerous do you want your average encounter to be? Some people are like, I play this to have fun, and it's stressful to be almost dying every round. And so I don't want I want it to be a pretty breeze to finish any encounter. And some people are like, I want the real threat of death in every encounter that we have. Otherwise, it's not worth playing. Politics. Are you interested in plot arcs and things that revolve around political intrigue and social subterfuge and like that sort of thing? Noir-esque crime mysteries or whodunits. How interested are you in crime mysteries as being like your plot hooks? Discovering somebody's been murdered and having to look for clues to find out who did it. How interested are you in building wealth and power, building a castle or accumulating wealth or running an empire or gaining a following of followers that follow you around and stuff? Whatever. So those questions I ask to get an idea of the style of the gameplay of each person, and then I take the average from all of the people who are playing in that game, and I say, overall, this is the level that they want from the dungeon delving and that sort of thing, and I put their game together based on that. It also helps me to know in advance whether there's going to be a huge disparity between one player super loves roleplay and one player hates it, or one player really wants a political subterfuge kind of game, and another player couldn't care less about politics of the world. One player is super keen on dungeon delving, and another player does not want to see a single trap or monster in a dungeon. So it helps me to know things like that ahead of time. The other survey that I send them is more of a trigger warning survey saying, tell me if there's anything here that you do not ever want to see in the game. Because there is nothing that is off limits by default in my games, except on-screen sex. I don't show on-screen sex because there's no point. We're not going to roll performance checks for sex or anything like that. There's no point to it. I will always fade to black with anything sexual. But romances, I have and do act out entire romantic storylines and plots and things with my characters, and I think it's a wonderful device. It's happened a couple of times. Just the other day, maybe a week or two back, we had an entire session which was basically the party getting one of their members ready for a date, because he had a date with his new boyfriend, and they were so nervous about it and they set a date to like meet at a pub at 7 o'clock, but they also had like this other thing to do during the day. So they were like, if we do go down, delve into this thing and deal with those kobolds, are we going to be guaranteed to be back for 7 o'clock? And then they had to get back, and they still, have we got time? We've got time. It's 4 o'clock now. We've got 3 hours. We need a half an hour walk to get back to my cabin to freshen up. And they were like preparing for this day. And then once they got back to the cabin, they all took like a mini side quest to like, I'm going to go look for flowers. And he runs off and rolls survival checks to look for flowers, to pick flowers in the woods. Somebody else goes, I'm going to go buy you a scented candle to give this guy as a gift. And so he runs off and he rolls persuasion checks against the shopkeeper to try and like haggle him down on this really expensive candle. Another one's like, I'm going to polish up your armor so you look real good when you arrive. And I'm going to braid your hair. And then eventually they did all that. They prepared for the date. They got to the date. They had this lovely. We role played the at least the beginning of the date. We role played through some like awkwardness around not knowing if the town that they were currently in was homophobic or not. As a general rule, nothing in my world is homophobic. I just decided that when I was creating it, I was like, hey, it's my world. I can have them do what they want. So racism in my world is very prevalent, but homophobia is not. People are just like, yeah, I don't give a shit. But in this character's backstory, the lady playing him said, she said, he comes from a homophobic town or whatever, and he had to escape that. And so I was like, okay, she wants some of that in the character act. She wants to be able to overcome that over time kind of thing with this character. And so I had this boyfriend that she's starting to try and woo, and he was like secretly putting his hand on her leg under the desk. And then when the lady came to the table to take their order, I described him as like withdrawing his hand and stuff like that. So just like little hints and things, and some people love that kind of role play around like romance, but some people would hate it. And so I asked them that to begin with. Do you want to see romance do you want any romance played out on camera or not? Side note, I've actually had somebody come out to me after a game, like a long time after the game, saying, I think it's because I got the opportunity to roleplay somebody who wasn't heterosexual in a safe scenario. I got to roleplay somebody in a homosexual relationship in D&D that actually allowed me to realize for myself and to be honest with myself about the fact that I am homosexual or bisexual. And so, yeah, I don't think we should ever dismiss romance as like, nah, there's no need for it in D&D. It's a very safe place to explore a whole bunch of things, and so you can it's a wonderful thing for that. But some people might have issues with eyeballs, and they're like, I don't want you to describe eyeballs hanging out off of your cheek and stuff like that. And so I'll be like, all right, I won't include that kind of thing. Some people don't ever want to see violence to children, which again isn't off limits by default, because there are monsters in D&D who will prey on children, or like hags that will eat children and things like that. And so if you don't want that, if you say hard no to that, I'm not interested in that sort of thing, then I will not take the campaign in that direction. An obvious one that you might think, why would that come up in D&D, is like sexual assault. But it's not off limits by default, because there are lots of the way that orcs and things are described as being like pillagers and rapers and all of this, and they'll just take what they want, and they'll steal women, and they'll steal everything that they need, kill the men and take the women back and stuff. And things like people like half orcs in the world, generally in my world, come from those sorts of unions, unconsensual unions. But the way that I deal with it is the important thing. The way that I mention it or anything, basically I never mention it on screen. I hint at it if it ever comes up. I've talked about this before, but Tal's, my friend FBGX, is playing a half orc, and because as we go we're learning more about her backstory, the topic has had to come up by necessity. And so I tried my best to do it in a to broach the subject in a tactful way that was kind of hinted at off screen. You know what happened. We don't need to talk about it per se. We certainly don't need to act anything out. But we all know what happened, and then we can move on, kind of thing. But if you are like hard no to anything like that, maybe you've experienced yourself, maybe for whatever reason you're like, just hard no, then we don't need to ever talk about it. We can assume that in the part of the world that we set your campaign, maybe orcs and humans get along fine, and they don't have unions that come from that sort of thing. They don't have half-orcs that come from that sort of union. They only come from happy families. Whatever. So yeah, I send them a survey of what sort of campaign do you want, and then I send them a survey of, is there anything triggering that you definitely do not want to see in your game? And then with that, I can put together what I'm doing. So all that came from Tezamil saying, I might ask my veteran players which they prefer. And me saying, absolutely, definitely ask your veteran players which one they prefer. Ask them things like this in your session 0. You should, in my opinion, always have a session 0, unless it's just a one-shot, in which case you're going to spend an entire session talking about this stuff for an entire session of playing, and then that's never going to play again. If it's a thing that you anticipate being a campaign or an ongoing thing, definitely have a session 0 where you talk all of this through, and you discuss what sort of game you like to run.
Hi there, if this is the first video you've watched of my stuff, check out more videos over here. I do D&D related content all the time.